One was pulled by Councilmember Montgomery. This is the fiscal year 2019 Homeland Security Grant Program Urban Area Security Initiative. There were no public speakers on this item.
Yes, thank you. I do have a PowerPoint here in front of me. I don't know if the plan was to present that. I don't. If no one else needs it, then I'm okay with looking at it. I just have a couple questions about this. It's a $16.9 million grant, and I want to just know what the general purposes for it are. I do have concerns with putting something like that through without having some sense of where that money is going, how it's been used in the past. I do know that it is, we're serving as a regional entity to give out money to other cities, other jurisdictions, but I'm still concerned. I have privacy concerns about what could potentially be bought with this money. Thank you for meeting with my office. You did provide a list. I did see a Bearcat vehicle on that list, and from the PowerPoint, I understand that this, whatever is used with this grant money is not to be used to supplement local law enforcement. So I want to know what those things, particularly those armored vehicles and things like that, are going to be used for.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Catherine Jackson. I'm the program manager for the City of San Diego's Office of Homeland Security. What you said, we use these funds to supplement, not supplant, so not show a cost savings in the general fund budget. So the Bearcat that you're specifically talking about is not for the City of San Diego. Like you mentioned before, we are a pass-through entity for the San Diego urban area at large. And so oftentimes, while money does come back to the city, the money oftentimes go to 18 other jurisdictions, including the county.
Is there ever a time where jurisdictions who buy equipment that it is used in another jurisdiction?
Absolutely.
And so with this grant money, does that same thing apply?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have one other question and then a couple more comments. My other question is, how long is this money used for? Do we get it annually and spend it out annually? Is that?
So these performance periods, or length of the grant funds that are eligible to be spent, are 3-year performance periods for each fiscal year, and this is on the federal fiscal year. This program has been going on since the year 2003, and while it's not a competitive grant, it's a meet needs grant, meaning we have a threat and hazard profile that's examined, a stakeholder preparedness report that's examined. So relative risk, according to the federal government, according to how they rate relative risk, that's how the money is allocated. Appropriated in the federal government, passed through the state, passed through us, and then out to the San Diego urban area.
So there's no traditional grant application, or?
Oh, no, there is a traditional grant application. We still have to, once we meet the relative risk profile, we still have to go through the application period. And the planning and application period is usually about a year to year and a half period.
Okay. So again, are the monies spent in that year, or?
In the 3-year performance period. Usually our subrecipients have about a 2-year performance period when we back off time to manage and administer the grant.
Okay. Based on what I have seen, I'm still not comfortable without a full dive into this, supporting this item. And I'm only saying that based on, I don't know where the targeted areas are. I don't know exactly what terrorism preparedness means, and how I do drive in my community and sometimes see tanks on the street. I don't know if that is related to this, but I have seen that, and so without that, knowing whether or not there is a connection, I just won't be able to support this. I overall know that any money that we get is needed. The one thing that I, as a council member, can look at is, where is the money going? What are we using it for? And does it align with our values. And so without that additional information, I won't be able to support this today.
Fair.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, and just kind of generate a few other questions that I know we've talked about as well over the years. You mentioned is this essentially a renewal of a sort of an existing revenue grant stream that we're coming for another 3-year period?
So the performance period, meaning the time of this specific FY19 grant, is a 3-year performance period. Every year, our threat hazard profile is evaluated and we apply for these funds. And so year over year, it's not guaranteed, but as long as the application is out there, we will apply.
When is the application due?
The application is due, it's on the federal fiscal year, so the funds are released. I mean, we started this application a year ahead of time.
October 1st it started.
Correct.
Okay, but we're applying to the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services.
That's correct.
Okay. When is the application due?
December 6th.
Okay. Is there a reason that this was brought at such a late hour, or that we didn't have a committee hearing on this item?
So this item doesn't go to committee, it goes to the grants review process, which is a relatively new process. So there is a review process, it's just not, it doesn't go through PSNL because it's over $1 million.
Given in line, I think, with some of the comments that some of us have shared about where our monies are ultimately ending up in the form of technology or other things, these are important, probably helpful tools, but we need to know. And we need to be able to articulate to many of our constituents specifically what these funds and ultimately these new things out in our community are going to be, how they're going to be interfacing with the public as well, and not affording us the opportunity to really have that deep dive and that understanding, I think, robs us of the ability to be able to talk to our constituents about that balance between public safety and privacy, which is really a keynote that I'm trying to be able to strike here. I will be able to support this project, this effort here today. I certainly don't want to miss the deadline for an opportunity that probably is going to be able to provide some benefit, but I have to underscore how critical it is that we have this responsible conversation around balancing privacy, security issues, and other opportunities that come with emerging technologies. One last question, of the $16.9 million, about how much of that do you anticipate is going to come towards the City of San Diego's procurement, and how much of that is going to be passed through? It's
about half that comes back to the city.
Okay. And will we have an opportunity to, at some appropriate place, have a conversation around that $9 million that is going to be enhancing city operations?
I can always provide a detailed explanation of exactly what we're purchasing, coming to your office and explaining line by line item detail if you'd prefer.
I certainly would. I would prefer that. I would also prefer that we have that conversation as well through a committee opportunity wherever appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. And I don't see anybody else in the lights, and I have not heard a motion. I do have a questions. Okay, we have a motion on the floor now by Councilmember Sherman. I have a question, a couple of questions related to this item. I definitely want to make sure that if this moves forward, which I think it will, or don't know, but if it does, it's definitely something that it should be brought up to committee to ensure that we are informed and have a more transparent conversation of what we're hoping to do, or if it's just continuing to do what we currently are doing. It's really important. The other piece, as I was diving into this issue, there's some requirements that are required by the UASI, which is one of them is that all activities require our regional approach. How do we know that's occurring? What does that look like?
That's a good question. We go through a vetting process where we examine capability gaps that are brought out through our security strategy. So this whole grant, while there's an algorithm based on relative risk, the architecture or the structure of this grant is a security strategy that all of the subject matter experts within the San Diego urban area participate in. So we have goals and objectives that meet the security strategy, and then the capability gaps are evaluated through a vetting process through our regional technology partnership. And then those recommendations are put forward to the urban area working group, or the UAG, and those UAG members vote. And that's the year-long process.
Okay. And is that something, as it goes through the different partnerships of the other cities, once that approach is approved, it gets voted on and discussed, right? Is that something that comes back to the city, or how do we know as a council what exactly are we doing?
Fair. So those, the urban area working group members are the 18 cities and the county. And those voting members are usually a fire chief, a police chief, or a member of the emergency management team. And so you can be certain that they are evaluating needs as they are the heads of the jurisdictions. And you can make sure that they are meeting the capability gaps because those are the subject matter experts. Now, how are you certain that as the money comes back that we are addressing those concerns? We can bring the security strategy to you and show you the capability gaps and show you that we are meeting the goals and the objectives based on what the architecture is all about. That's up to you. I'm happy. Our office is happy to meet with you individually, but this is not something we would discuss in open session.
Okay. I think that would be very useful.
Absolutely.
The more information, I think, the better, because
Sure.
we definitely are asked quite often, and if
No
we don't know what
problem.
the answer is, we don't know what the answer is.
Sure.
It's not a good way to manage. And then the other one is, I think there's been conversations, or I do know that ACLU has raised some concerns related to ensuring that we're not targeting a group of population, religious or whatnot, and they have proposed certain guidance to ensure that that doesn't happen. Is that something that we have implemented?
When you say we don't target, what specifically do you mean?
For example, District 9, I have a huge refugee community, a Muslim community. There's been narrative, not here, but in other cities, Muslim communities have been targeted as suspicion of terrorism. Is that something that we do?
Unfortunately, I am not the authority. I can't answer that question as something we would do, because it's certainly not something the Office of Homeland Security would do, but I'm not quite sure what you're asking me.
Well, that's the thing, right? If we don't, these are conversations that we need to ensure that they're not occurring. In terms of, I know that ACLU has provided policies to ensure that the religious and even political organizations are not being targeted. Are those proposed policies, is that something that we have included in our practices?
Okay, so I think what I hear you saying is as we purchase equipment, as we use dollars for planning, are we specifically going to great detail to ensure that populations aren't targeted by what we're
Correct.
purchasing, by what we're planning? And I would say absolutely, that's part of a federal mandate as well.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have at this moment, so I'm hoping that there can be a further discussion as we move forward.
Sure.
So I don't see anybody else on the lights. So with that, we do have a motion by Councilmember Sherman, second by Councilmember Kate. Please vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
And that passes 8-1 with Councilmember Montgomery voting no.
Thank you.
Our